All right, so this week we're very lucky to have Dianbo Liu and Vedant Shah as presenting. So I will read both bios. So Dianbo is a postdoctoral machine learning researcher in the group of Yoshua Bengio, who won the Turing Award, if you didn't know, at the Mila Quebec AI Institute. He additionally leads the humanitarian AI team of 19 researchers. Dianbo's research spans both fundamental machine learning and its applications in biomedical informatics. Prior to joining the Bengio team, Dianbo worked and studied at the University of Dundee, Harvard University, and Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Dianbo co-founded and served as the first CTO of Secure AI Labs, which was based in Massachusetts, which is an MIT spinoff that focuses on federated learning for social good. In his personal life, Dianbo is a stand-up comedian in training. Well, I hope we can expect lots of jokes during the talk then. That's great. Vedant is a research intern with Prof. Yoshua Bengio's group at Mila, Montreal, where he's mentored by Anirudh Goyal. He completed his undergraduate studies in electronics and communication engineering from BITS Pilani, India, where he was advised by Professor Ashwin Srinivasan at the APP Center for AI Research, AppCare, and also spent time interning at TCS Research. His research interests include improving sample efficiency and out-of-distribution generalization abilities of AI systems in general, and deep learning and reinforcement learning agents in particular. To this end, he is interested in looking into approaches based on human cognitive inductive biases, meta-learning, and neurosymbolic methods. All right, well, thank you so much, both of you, for being here, and I'll let you take it away.
Yep, thank you, Natasha. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the talk. So today, Vedant and I are going to talk about our new submission to ICLR, Stateful Active Facilitator, which is used to study coordination and environmental heterogeneity levels in cooperative multi-agent reinforcement learning settings. And this is an overview of the talk. It should be between 30 to 35 minutes. We are going to firstly introduce the problem we like to solve or the question we like to answer. Then we are going to show you the newly proposed environment, multi-agent reinforcement learning environment we developed to solve the problem we analyzed in this study. Then we are going to show you the new algorithm we developed to improve the performance. And lastly, we are going to demonstrate the results of the experiments. And I am going to presenting section 1 and 2, but Vedant is going to presenting 3 and 4. Okay, so what is the problem we like to solve? Oh, first of all, I apologize for my voice today. I have a flu today, that's why I sound very strange. Okay, so everyone is familiar with multi-agent reinforcement learning on this call. And in cooperative multi-agent reinforcement learning, different agents have to coordinate among themselves to achieve the same goal. And usually, the reward will be distributed among the agent on the same team after it's obtained. And then we ask a question. So what makes some games more difficult than other games? And we implicitly know there are some factors, but can we dissect them, disentangle them, and analyze them in a systematic way? So this is a problem we like to solve overall in this direction. We know already there are many characters of the environments contributing to the difficulty, such as sparsity of reward, complexity of environment, number of agents, and so on. Some of them are relatively well understood. Some of them are less explored. So in this particular study, we focus on two aspects that are less explored in the field, which are coordination level required and the environmental heterogeneity. The reason they are picked, in addition to their less explored, is number one, these two are closely related to each other. Number two is they are both important for cooperative tasks. Now I am going to introduce to you what they are and how we define them in our study. So intuitively, we understand in a cooperative task, different tasks may require different amount of coordination. Okay, if you want to carry up a sofa in your bedroom, if it's light in weight, you can carry it by yourself. But it's very heavy, you have to ask your father together to carry it, or your brother together to carry it. However, if it's extremely heavy, you have to call all your family to carry it all together. That's a very difficult task because first of all, you have to get everyone around the sofa, and everyone have to take the same action, lifting up simultaneously and then move in a coordinated way. That's a much more difficult task than a two-person carrying a sofa task. And in our study, we define this coordination level in a quantitative way, and we define it as minimum number of agents required to be involved to obtain a positive reward in the task. We are going to show you some examples in the environmental section. And for environmental heterogeneity level, intuitively you can understand it as different environmental dynamics may be at different parts of the environment. Say, for example, you are jumping straight up and in different parts of the universe. On Earth, you can jump probably half a meter maximum, maybe 1 meter for NBA players. But on Moon, you can jump much higher. In some other places, you can jump like 10 meters probably. So in different places or different parts of the environmental dynamic is different. And in our setting, we also quantify this, and we defined as the number of different state transition functions in the environment. We are also going to show you some real examples in the next section. Okay, so why these two things together? Okay, imagine you and your brother are carrying a piece of furniture up your staircase. So of course you two have to coordinate with each other. So the coordination level is 2. Assume that like this furniture requires 2 persons to carry it. And then the one on the higher end of the staircase have a different environmental dynamics than the one on the bottom of the staircase because the Newtonian forces and the stair itself. So this coordination levels and the environmental heterogeneity many times have to be considered together to solve a cooperative task. Okay, so in our setting, we want to control as much as possible all other factors and focus on only coordination levels and heterogeneity levels as much as possible to understand and dissect the difficulty and understand their contribution to difficulty. And so in order to answer the question, the contribution of each of them to overall difficulty of cooperative game or task, and which algorithm may perform better on when these 2 levels are high, and how can we improve our machine learning algorithm when heterogeneity level or coordination levels are high. Feel free to ask me questions if you have any question at any time.
Yeah, I have one.
Yes.
You're talking about like how to measure the contribution of the coordination challenges or the other to difficulty, right? But do we even have a way to put a metric on difficulty?
You can look at performance. You can maybe reduce your performance of your team, right? That's something relative. It's not absolute, right?
Yes, but if you measure performance, you mean like just the reward or like the return. But
Yeah,
that would already be on a specific game. Are you comparing different games?
In our study, we compare among we compare among different games, and we also compare say similar game but with different level of coordination level and different levels of heterogeneity levels.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah. So yes, you are right. That difficulty might be slightly different as human experiences. I agree with you. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, but in order to study this, the first problem we meet is there are no reinforcement learning environment in the literature that allow us to quantitatively and control these 2 levels in details. And therefore, the first thing we did in our project is actually build the environments. So we built a set of environments called HECOGrid, which allow us to control the coordination levels and environmental heterogeneity levels. And it's based on the published environment called multi-agent grid world. And one example is showing on the screen. It's like a big room. All those blue colors triangles, they are agents. There are many of them. Those yellow colors squares, they are treasures. And those brown, gray color, each color, they are obstacles or barriers. So the goal for the team, cooperative goal for the team of agents is collect as many treasures as possible. And of course, the reward will be distributed across the agents. And the environment set will allow us to control, in addition to coordination level and heterogeneity levels, many other things, such as number of agents, number of obstacles, number of treasures, size of the room, even shape of the room. And so it's very flexible. And I'm going to show you three examples we put into the manuscript. And one of it is called a team together environment. Okay, so that red color square now is a treasure to be collected, which give you a reward. Those blue color triangles, they are agents. In the team together environment, in order for the agent to collect the treasure, certain number of agents have to simultaneously get into the treasure. And that number of agents required is defined as coordination level. So therefore, this team together is very difficult game because, for example, if the coordination level is 3 of the triangle have to move. Firstly, move nearby to the treasure, then move together simultaneously onto the treasure in order to collect the one single treasure. It's a very difficult game. Okay, that's a coordination level. For I think someone asked a question. I heard something.
Yes, hello.
Yeah.
Just wanted to ask, when you say, for example, 3 are needed, I assume, but I wanted to ask you, there are n agents and there are only 3 needed. Is that the setting that you had in mind for this game?
Or
not?
Okay. So there are many agents in the environment, say 20, 10, like that, right? Let's say the coordination level is 3. Then to collect a specific treasure like the one on my screen, 3 of the 20 agents needs to step onto this square, which representing the treasure simultaneously.
Okay, so whoever goes and collects gets a reward, and the others, the other 17 do not get a reward.
Oh, it's okay. So we use the simplest setting of cooperative game. So if one agent gets the reward, it will be evenly distributed across all the team members.
Okay, yeah, this is very interesting. I don't want to monopolize the questions. So if we have time at the end, I'll ask you more. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for asking the question. Okay, and yeah, good. And then I will talk about the heterogeneity levels. For heterogeneity level, we vertically divide the environment into K sections. Okay, just vertically slice. And in each of the section, the same action will lead to different movement. Same action index will lead to different movement. So, and this number of different sections, K value, is defined as the environmental heterogeneity level. So that is heterogeneity. Okay, then we'll move to next environment. To team support environment, it's slightly different. To collect a treasure, only one agent needs to step into it, but it needs to be supported by a certain number of agents within certain distance. Say within distance of two blocks. Okay, so this number of agents are surrounded around the area is defined as coordination level. So this is a slightly easier task compared to team together because only one agent have to be on it. Other guys can be just around it within a distance. And the environment heterogeneity level is defined the same way as team together environment. And we also have a key for treasure environment. It's similar to team support, except the agent have to go somewhere to pick up a key first before the agent can open the treasure to collect the reward. And of course, and similar as team support environment, the agent while open the treasure needs to be supported by a certain number of agents around the treasure location, and that number of agents is defined as the coordination level. And in this environment, one key can open any apologize, can open any treasure. And once an agent pick up a key, the color of the agent turn from blue to red. So other agent can see this agent already have a key. We should help him. Okay, so that are the three environment we used in our iClear submission. And okay, so in the previous two sections, we explained the problem and the question we like to solve and answer, and we show you the HECOGrid environments we developed to help us answer the question. Now I'm going to pass the time to Vedant to describe our algorithm and the experimental section. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Dianbo. Okay, I'll just share my screen. Is it okay? I hope you can see my screen. Or
not yet. And also, but just as a note, the mic is a little low. As a heads up, that can be adjusted. That might help.
hold on. Okay,
It's a little bit. Oh, perfect. It's starting to present.
Okay. Okay, so I'll present Stateful Active Facilitator, which is a new MARL approach which we developed to address this problem of coordination and heterogeneity simultaneously. So a lot of existing approaches mainly focus on addressing coordination or some other factors, but this spatial heterogeneity hasn't been sufficiently addressed up till now. So just to quickly go over or have an overview of the existing prominent MARL approaches, we have this huge family of approaches called centralized training, decentralized execution, wherein basically during training you have a centralized controller, which is usually a centralized critic, which guides the policy updates for each of all the agents. So all the agents pass some sort of information. In most of the cases, it's an observation or a state to the centralized critic, and based on that observation, this critic guides or coordinates the agents. So examples of this, we have MADDPG, MAPPO, HEPPO, which are just CTD extensions of standard RL approaches like DDPG, PPO. And then we also have value decomposition methods, which are based on Q-learning. So instead of following an actor critic sort of framework, it just has a centralized critic or a centralized value function, and the value is calculated using some complex arithmetic or combinations of values of each of the agents. And depending on that, all of the agents take actions. So in that family, we have value decomposition networks, QMix, Qplex, and then we have some approaches which are not necessarily relevant to our work, but we have communication in RL, wherein either on top of CTD or without CTDE, there is some inter-agent communication, O of n square or O of n communication. So Tarmac uses an O of n square communication where each agent sends messages to every other agent, and Dial and Real use O of n communication. And again, communication helps the agents to coordinate better amongst themselves, but it has this communication overhead. And then we have sort of the naivest possible extension of RL to multi-agent RL setting, which is you just take a particular, or you just equip each of the agents with its own RL policy. So you have independent PPO and independent Q-learning. There's no centralized critic or no communication among the agents. Now, what SAF does is we just basically extend this CTD learning paradigm. So the main thing that CTD tries to solve is the problem of non-stationarity in MARL. So if you're looking from a point of view of a particular agent, temporarily the environment dynamics are changing because the policy of other agents are getting updated, and this sort of destabilizes the training if we don't have a central controller which has sort of access to all the information in the environment. So this is what CTD approaches try to address. Now, what SAF does is that on top of these CTD framework, we have two components. We have a shared knowledge source and a shared pool of policies. I should mention here that this shared pool of policies, so basically making it shared is a design choice. You can also have an independent pool of policies, but we found this to be working better. Yeah, so as you may notice, SAF can essentially be built on top of any of the existing CTD approaches. Yeah. So I'll go over each of the two components separately and sort of try to explain how they work. The knowledge source is basically a latent state consisting of L slots, and each of these L slots are of a given particular dimension. So it can simply be instantiated as a random matrix of size L cross DL. And we represent the state of the knowledge source at time step t by ft. Now, what happens is that once all the agents have received the observation, they compete amongst themselves to write or to update the state of this knowledge source. And this competition sort of happens through a soft attention mechanism. And once this is done, we have an optional step where you can either update or process the state of knowledge source on itself by using something as, let's say, self-attention. So, and you can also do it in cycles. So we'll have an iterative self-attention, cross-attention loop, where the cross-attention is with the messages from the agents, and in the self-attention, we are just processing the state of the knowledge source. Now, once this is done, once the processing is done, there is now a soft competition among these slots of the knowledge source to send a message to a particular agent. So it's essentially the same as what was happening before, but the roles are now reversed. So the knowledge source is trying to send messages to each of the agents now. And after that, the agents send this or use these messages to form sort of an informed state, which is then passed on to the centralized critic in case of CTD. And this central critic, as is the norm, now guides the policy updates during train time. So one important thing to mention here is that the knowledge source, since we don't use the critic during execution in CDD approaches, the knowledge source is also not used during execution. So it's just, so knowledge source is just like a training time thing. So to go into more, okay, is that a question?
Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
I think you're gonna actually explain it in the next slide about like what's actually being stored in the knowledge source. So I think I'm gonna wait.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I
Right.
just have another question. Since we are
Yeah.
on presentation. If all the agents see everything, or do they only see what's around it, or do they see all other agents and the task?
No, so we work in sort of a partially observable setting.
Okay.
So each agent only sees a particular area, region around itself. For us, it's like a 7x7 grid around the agent.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the question. So to sort of elaborate how the knowledge source work, each agent receives an observation, let's call it OIT. And so the agent, or not necessarily the agent, but we have this common visual encoder which encodes each observation of the agent into a message. So this message is specific to the agent. And now once we have the collection of all the messages, which we represent by this matrix, So for soft computation, you need a query. So now the query is initialized by the current state of the knowledge source. So this state can be initial at the start of the training, it can be randomly initialized, or you can follow any of the standard initializations that we normally use for deep learning parameters. So we have a query metric, which is again a parameter, and which is used to sort of make a query out of this state, knowledge source state. And how the state is updated is by using this softmax attention. So you have the query that comes from the knowledge source, and the messages from the agents are used as keys and values. So the messages sort of compete amongst themselves since it's like a softmax weighting. The messages compete among themselves to update each slot of the knowledge source. Once this is done, we do and okay, there's obviously the optional step of doing some internal processing on the knowledge source, for example, self-attention. And then once the state of the knowledge source has been updated, the knowledge source sends messages back to the agents. So now again, this is done through soft attention. The only difference is that the query over here is calculated using the states of the agents, and the key over here is calculated using this updated knowledge source state. Yeah, please go on.
Hey, yeah. So please remind me, what was the purpose of the competition again? Is this like an importance sampling sort of an idea that, okay, if we have like multiple agents, so somebody's observation is more important as compared to somebody else's observation?
Yeah.
And
So this knowledge source, sorry, go ahead.
How is that importance being decided?
Okay, so it's essentially a sort of importance sampling. How this importance is being decided is that you have this query matrix, which you get from the state of the knowledge source, and then you have a separate matrix, which we call the key matrix. So this is like a standard query key values attention mechanism, which is used everywhere in transformers. And yeah, it's ubiquitous nowadays. So you have query matrix and the key matrix, you sort of do a dot product between those, and then you apply a softmax on it. So you get, now these are the softmax weights, and then you apply some sort of transform on all of these messages. And these weights decide how important each of these messages is. So the message having a more weight in this softmax attention would have a higher weight in the updated state of the knowledge source. Is that clear?
So all of the messages are being used, but they're just weighted.
Exactly, yeah. And these weights are learned essentially during the training.
Okay, thanks.
Right. So this is actually, we can say that the knowledge source acts as an information bottleneck. So it sort of filters out, sift through all the messages sent by the agents and filters out all the relevant information. And the vice versa happens when the knowledge source tries to send messages to the agents. And yeah, it's this sort of latent state has been used in a lot of works. For example, Perceiver, Perceiver.io. Then you have the shared workspace paper, and so all of this is like, this is a side note, but all of this is inspired by a global workspace theory where it says that the signals in a human brain essentially go through a similar kind of bottleneck before being processed. So yeah, just a quick interesting side note. Now, okay, so that was the knowledge source. Now moving on to the other component of our approach, we have a pool of policies. So which is essentially nothing, but you have a set of policies, and each policy has a unique signature which is attached to it, or that goes along with it. And this signature is essentially a vector or a learnable vector. Again, it gets updated during training. So let's say in our case, you have view policies. So we'll have U. So we call these signatures as policy keys. So this K by U essentially denotes the policy key for the youth policy. Now, what happens is that when the agent receives the observation, conditioned on that observation, the agent dynamically selects one particular policy from this pool of policies. And how that selection happens? That happens through a Gumbel softmax attention. So this is a hard form of attention. I'll describe it in detail in the next slide. But unlike the soft attention that we were using earlier for updating the knowledge source state, so it essentially selects just one policy among all the pool of policies. And the motivation behind this is that we are trying to train specialists, and each of which, so the specialist here being each of the policy present in the pool, and so that different policies are sort of able to counter or tackle different environmental conditions. And by different environmental conditions, one possible factor is heterogeneity, of course. So how this works is that we have this set of keys. And so this is the state of each agent. The state is nothing but an encoded version of the local observation that the agent has received. So now, in the same way as we created a query from the knowledge source state, we create a query in this case from the agent state. And this query is used to select one of the policies. So again, it's the same thing. If you notice, it's the same arithmetic as we saw before. Just in this case, instead of doing a softmax, that is, as you mentioned, that each of the messages have certain weight and all of them are getting integrated. In this case, we'll just simply pick the policy which has the highest weight and use that for selecting the action of the agent. And this is done in a differentiable fashion so that you can backpropagate through the selection and update the parameters of this key. Right, so just to give a quick overview of our method, we have each agent receives its observation. It produces a message using that observation. Now, and you have the current state of the knowledge source. So you get a query from the current state of the knowledge source, and you get keys, which is this thing basically MT into W, these are the keys for the softmax attention. Using this attention, we update the state of the knowledge source. And then, as I mentioned, that you have an optional step of processing the knowledge source. Once this is done, the information is made available to all the agents. So again, the knowledge source writes into all the agents. And independent of these three steps, based on the current state of the agent, we do a policy selection, and using that policy, we calculate the action of the agent. And so essentially where the knowledge source comes in is while updating or while calculating the advantage value for the loss. For example, for PPO, you can have advantage function or something else. Okay, so we have discussed problem environments algorithm. Now moving on to the experiments. So we use multi-agent PPO and independent PPO as our baselines. And we use multi-agent PPO with parameter sharing because it has been shown that this actually really helps. So what this means is that the critic and the parameters for the critic and as well as the actor are shared for all the agents. And so we perform the following experiments. We compare SAF to MAPPO and IPPO across different heterogeneity levels. So Dianbo discussed these three tasks that we have in HECOGrid. And for all of these tasks, you can quantitatively vary the coordination levels. So we compare the performance of these three approaches across these three tasks. So first we do it for different coordination levels. And for these experiments, the heterogeneity level is kept constant at 1. And then we do the same thing for different heterogeneity levels while the coordination level is kept constant at 1. Next, we also do some generalization studies where you have the algorithm trained on a particular level of coordination and a particular level of heterogeneity. And we evaluate or we see how that policy or algorithm or the trained policies transfer to different coordination and heterogeneity levels. There's some minor training details. All the algorithms or all the policies are trained for 10 million time steps, and all of the things in our experiments at least, are the same as MAPPO. Okay, so now talking about the results for different coordination levels, we have team together, team support, and key for treasure environment. The purple bars that you see are SAF, the green bars are MAPPO, and the red bars are IPPO. So for coordination level 1, we can see that there's our approach clearly outperforms the baselines. And I mean, it's also apparent for coordination level 2, but as the coordination level increases, you can see that the tasks actually get very difficult and the performance drops to essentially 0 for the 3 environments and a coordination level of 3. Okay, so just to clarify here, a coordination level of 1 doesn't mean that the agents do not need to coordinate at all. So for example, in the team together environment, only one agent will need to step on a particular tile to pick it up, but the agents still need to take care of things like if a lot of agents are already present in a particular region, then the other agents need to avoid that region and sort of go somewhere else in order to ensure that maximum number of treasures are picked up and so on. Now, so experiments for different heterogeneity levels. So we vary heterogeneity level from 1 to 5. So we have 5 different zones for a heterogeneity level of 5. We have 5 different zones in the environment, and each action. So this is essentially building the HECOGrid environment is essentially built on top of mini grid. So you have 7 actions. So what happens is that in one particular zone, action number 0 can mean turning right, but in another zone, action number 0 can mean something else. For example, moving forward. So this is how the heterogeneity in different zones is implemented. So the results for heterogeneity or across different heterogeneity levels are much more encouraging actually. So you can see that SAF again outperforms the baselines by a significant amount in all the 3 environments. We can see that the performance is dropping rapidly for key for treasure environment, which also tells us that it's an empirically more difficult environment. So I think someone asked before that how can we quantify difficulty? There's no standard definition, but we can always use proxies, for example, performance of these approaches. Or in our case, you can also do something naive like the sum of heterogeneity and coordination equal to the difficulty of the environment. Right. Now moving on to the out of distribution evaluation. So we train all these 3 approaches on a coordination level of 2 and heterogeneity level of 1. And then we evaluate these on and see how these transfer to coordination levels 1 and 3. So these plots are the same as the ones that I showed before here, but yeah, so actually SAF doesn't transfer as well, or it transfers just as well as the other, or at least MAPPO. In some cases it doesn't do as well, but this is, so we can say that this is a limitation of our approach. And if we perform the same, yeah, is there a question?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just a little confused. What are our expectations on transferring to essentially training on one level of coordination and then evaluating on all 3? It's not clear to me like what we might expect, or if this like would essentially be different from our expectations.
So the expectation in terms of heterogeneity is that, so by heterogeneity, I mean experiments where we are training on a particular level of heterogeneity and then transferring them.
Understood.
Is that our approach should be able to transfer better because you have this pool of policies. And if the pool of policies was trained up on a particular level, which already had a particular zone, which let's say corresponded to action 0 being, or 0 resulting in the agent moving forward, it might also encounter the same, case in some other environment, and it will be able to adapt to it better, but this won't be the case for monolithic algorithms like MAPPO and IPPO. For coordination, sorry.
Oh, sorry, go on. My bad. Good.
Yeah, so for coordination level, we don't have like a concrete intuition of why it doesn't perform well, but the expectation again with this was that it would be able to perform just as well as MAPPO because, as I said, what we can see the knowledge source as sort of an information bottleneck. So it's essentially aiding the critic in guiding the policies better, coordinating the policies better. But from the experiments, we can see that it's not true for all the cases. It's true for most of the cases, but not all the cases.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so moving on to heterogeneity. Again, even for this set of experiments, the results are more encouraging when it comes to heterogeneity. So we train on a heterogeneity level of 2 and coordination level of 1, which is not mentioned over here. And then we test transfer on heterogeneity levels of 1 to 5. So in this case, in most of the cases, our approach either performs just as well as MAPPO. So it beats IPPO in all the cases. But when it comes to MAPPO, it either performs just as well as MAPPO or actually outperforms it. So, okay, do we have some time? So I haven't included some results in the slides, but we actually performed a set of ablation studies.
Yeah, we have until 10, so use that time how you want.
Okay, so I don't have like the plots over here. You can go check them out in the paper. But we also performed a set of ablation studies where so SAF is essentially CTD plus 2 components, right? You have CTD plus KS plus the pool of policies. So we remove the pool of policies and then perform all these experiments, and then we remove the knowledge source and keep the pool of policies and perform all these experiments. And it's not very surprising, but we can see that presence of the knowledge source actually helps in tackling quote unquote tackling coordination, whereas presence of the pool of policies helps in tackling heterogeneity, which was the hypothesis that we started with. All right, so that's what I think the presentation comes to an end here. Thank you very much for attending, and we can take any more questions that you may have.
Yeah, thank you for coming and presenting. So if anybody has any questions, the floor is open. I guess most of us have till 10 PST. So I'm going to mute myself. If no one has questions, I have some.
Oh, hi. My name is Jordy. Sorry, I realized I should have probably raised hand first. But I had a question just on the value in having the 3 different iterations of HECOGrid. It wasn't clear to me quite like what further information is given by looking at the results of like increasing the heterogeneity and the coordination levels between like team together and the key. And the third one, which I think I missed the name, but I was just wondering if you could talk about like what you saw the value of testing on all 3 environments versus just changing the levels in one of the 3 environments.
Right. So like the only reason behind having 3 separate tasks, Dianbo, you can elaborate on this later, but the only reason for having these 3 separate tasks was to sort of have 3 tasks with varying difficulties. I know this term keeps popping up, but if you see team together, it's sort of okay. If let's say if we assign it a difficulty level of D, it needs n number of agents to step on a particular treasure to collect it. So team support will have a difficulty which is less than team together because all the agents do not necessarily need to step on a particular tile to pick it up. In fact, if 2 tiles are really close by, a particular support agent can serve as a support agent for two different tiles at the same time. So this sort of makes it less difficult than team together. And then the last one, I think, is the most difficult task, wherein the agent has to do an extra step of collecting a key before stepping onto an environment. And we can also see from the results that the algorithms or baseline plus SAF perform best on team together and okay-ish on team support and relatively not so great on key for treasure environment. That's yeah, sorry, go on.
Oh, no, go ahead. I just didn't catch the last sentence you said, yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that that was the only sort of motive behind introducing 3 separate tasks.
Understood. It makes sense. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Okay, I mean, I should have raised my hand as well. I have a quick MAPPO question.
Yeah.
So I need to read the appendix of your paper more carefully. How much time? How do you know what like your batch size was in this training? Where the batch size here, I'm interested in it as a function of the total batch.
I mean,
Like,
Right,
as in,
so-
like, was the batch size a quarter of the total batch, a tenth, 100th?
thousands.
Say
Thousands.
it's 1,000th.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like 1,000, but in the order of 1,000 something. The reason is we're running many of the environment in parallel to speed up the training. I mean, even then it takes like 3 days to train the whole thing. So we, because of the parallelization we did, so it's batch size is quite big. Yeah.
So sorry, just to be clear, the batch size is like 1,000th of the total training batch, or the batch size is about 1,000.
Oh,
No,
well,
no, so,
I'm confused about. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I don't think I'm being very clear. Okay, so what I'm asking is like, okay, suppose the total training batch for a rollout is like 4,000 elements. Is the batch size like a quarter of that total training batch, an eighth, like? Basically, here's what I'm trying to get at. In the MAPPO paper, what we found was that the ratio between basically the number of that we found that if we took a lot of mini batches, like performance of MAPPO and IPPO degraded really, really fast. So I'm curious whether you perform tuning over the number of mini batches taken.
No, so okay, we just to be more specific, we have like 64 environments in parallel and then 256 rollouts in a batch. But
Yeah.
so all these hyperparameters are exactly the same as the ones that MAPPO uses, because we just took the MAPPO code and sort of added these components on top of that.
Okay.
But
great.
didn't perform any mini batch tuning or anything.
Okay. Just as a future helpful thing, that we found that to be a pretty critical parameter to tune. It's like was probably the most important thing we tuned.
Oh,
right.
What's the reason do you think that's important?
I think it's a non-stationarity thing, or my theory is, right? So like when PPO, once you take a single gradient update, you're already off policy. And you try to control that with the advantage clipping, but like you get even more off policy in multi-agent settings, right?
Yeah.
So generally, my logic in multi-agent settings has just been like, yeah, you need to take fewer gradient steps per rollout, per training iteration. It's not a criticism. I think if you used our hyperparameters, you're probably fine. I just thought is a useful thing to know.
Okay, I see.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's interesting.
We didn't change that, I think.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, thank you for the talk. I'll mute myself so someone else can ask a question.
Any other questions? Oh, okay.
Great. I guess that's all the questions we have, but thank you so much again for coming and presenting.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
It's a real pleasure to meet y'all, and well, you're welcome to come back and attend in the future.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.